Okay, so I'm supposed to talk to you about quality indicators and how to develop quality indicators, which has been a more and more important issue during the last, I would say, like 15 years. The background is basically started this discussion already in 2008, 2009, due to the European economical crisis that was these years, when people started to ask, why should we spend money on youth work? We have an economical crisis, school is important, social services is important. What do we get out of spending money on youth work? And there were a lot of European initiatives to clarify actually what youth work is and what are the benefits, both for young people and for society through running youth work. These initiatives was mainly from the Council of Europe and the European Union, the Commission, since the sector itself is so scattered, I would say. There weren't any really big network or voices for the youth work sector. The only actor that was there was the European Youth Forum, more or less, but the providers of youth work were not really into this kind of a discussion during quite many years. So that's sort of the background to this, and indicators, as I will talk to you about, was one way to make clear what youth work actually is and what it could provide for young people. Good. So quality indicators, what, why, and how. So aims of this presentation is to give you the knowledge and skills needed in order to formulate quality indicators on youth work, and the competencies needed to understand how indicators are linked to documentation and follow-up, as well as the setting of aims and objectives for youth work. So these are the two main ideas behind this presentation. So starting with this, why set quality indicators? Because they help us in quite many ways. They help us to create a common understanding of what constitutes quality. What do we mean when we say quality? What are the sort of signs of quality? To know what information and knowledge we need in order to improve. To set measurable aims. To get a recipe on the work done. That is to say, many youth workers for many years have said, oh, we couldn't show what we have been achieving because it doesn't show today. But this is a way to get sort of a more immediate recipe on what we have been doing. And to show our outcomes to others and to do knowledge-based advocacy. To actually be able to argue for youth work based on fact, not based on just beliefs. So what is the background? I started a little bit about the economical crisis and all the different various initiatives taken on a European level. And one important initiative was shown in this document. It's called Working with Young People, the Value of Youth Work in the European Union. It was a broad mapping of the current state of play of youth work in all the member states of the EU, and it came in 2014, so it was done in 2012, 2013. All countries had to send in a lot of information regarding the current state of play of youth work. I was part of the ones giving the information about Sweden, but this came from all the European countries. It's still quite an interesting read. It's a huge document, so it takes some time to go through it. And I will only state two things from this, because these are the two really essential messages from this broad mapping. It's a blurred picture. They state that it's not very clear what youth work is and what youth work is not. Where are the borders to other sectors like education, social work, sports, culture, etc.? And there was it was hard to do a mapping of something that I really didn't know what it was. And it was stated that we need to have a more knowledge-based approach to youth work, both in terms of knowledge-based policy and in terms of a knowledge-based practice. And one way to achieve this was to provide evidence I have to move you around because you are in the middle of my screen for some reason. Providing evidence can allow use work to illustrate some insights into what it is doing and where its strengths lie, not only externally, for example, to funders, but internally when reflecting on its own practice and process. So it's about providing evidence for what we are doing and the outcomes of this. So the lack of tools to provide evidence is hindering UseWork's ability to demonstrate its effectiveness. We've been guessing and talking, but we couldn't prove what we're actually achieving. So one of the initiatives was started actually the year before by the European Commission. The Council of Ministers in 2013 started an expert group on use work quality systems, and we had the task to examine use work quality systems in the EU member states and explore how common indicators or frameworks may be developed. This was a huge group, 22 people. I was chairing this expert group for 2 years, and that was a challenge trying to get 22 different countries to agree on what our common sort of framework for use work. But we actually succeeded, and there came a report, Quality Use Work, a common framework for the further development of use work. In 2015 came this report. And it was stating that working with indicators, quality tools, and systems is crucial to continuous development of use work and has a great potential to contribute to an enhanced credibility and recognition of the use work sector as a whole. And these kind of statements you will be able to find in all different resolutions and recommendations taken both by the EU and the Council of Europe in the coming years. So this report was then turned into a handbook on quality development, improving use work, your guide to quality development. And the purpose was, of course, to provide the use work sector with an easily accessible, concrete model for continuous, systematic, and knowledge-based quality development. And I would say that this is a tip for all different kinds of projects that start around these kind of issues, because you're not the only project sort of discussing these kind of matters. There is a lot of things done already. And it's a good idea to get informed about what things are done so you don't invent the wheel once again, but actually build on the knowledge that there already is. And this is one of the sort of handbooks that you could use in this. KEX with partners then ran a Erasmus Plus strategic partnership on quality indicators based on this previous report. And the result was a handbook on quality indicators called Inspiring Quality Use Work, using indicators to strengthen the quality of use work.
Jonas, I'm just going to interrupt you now. Yeah, this book actually, the ones in the project has gotten this book when I was in Naples.
Okay, great.
You know, they have this one and have read it. Yeah.
Yes, and there's also another one on street work, which perhaps is even more instructive when it comes to how to work with the creation of indicators, actually. I didn't use that one here. The presentations will give you a brief summing up of the essentials in this material. So I will sort of give you the most important parts and an overview from all these different documents that I now have been mentioning so far. And then you can start working, learning by doing, if you want to create quality indicators. But first, I would like to give you some more context, because if you are going to do quality development of use work, you must first start with having a common view on what use work actually is. And that, I would say, still was the main part of this development process that started in 2013 maybe and had been continuing up till at least 2020 when all these 2021 when all these main policy documents defining use work has been elaborated. So some recent policy development related to use work, so you get a sort of contextual background to this. In 2015, there was held the second European Youth Work Convention. It was held in Brussels. It contained national delegations from all the member states and also from quite some countries that are members of the Council of Europe. Around 500 persons with the idea of establishing a common ground for youth work. However, 500 persons, 3 days in Brussels, you don't end up with a common ground for youth work, but there was some common ideas and wishes on how to create such a common ground. So what we asked for during this convention was a Council of Europe recommendation on youth work that actually came in 2017, a European Charter on Local Youth Work that actually came in 2019, and a EU resolution on a European Youth Work Agenda that came in 2020. And the last one I will mention, we didn't ask for, but it came anyhow. That was the Council of Europe Congress of Local and Regional Authorities that gave out a publication called Youth Work and the Role of Local and Regional Authorities in 2021. And I would say that these are the main documents that are sort of guiding youth work today. They are stating what youth work is, and in some parts what youth work is not, because it's, of course, important to state both what youth work is, but also to make clear the borders to other kinds of activities, mainly schooling and social work. So if you are more interested, you could dig into these different documents. The most important one of this, I would still say, is the Council of Europe recommendation on youth work. If you talk about political documents supporting youth work, if you talk about youth work development, the Charter and Congress resolution are the two most important ones to make sort of hands-on concrete changes and arguments, giving arguments for youth work. All of them stating the importance of quality development, of course, and giving you arguments for implementing the results of your projects as well. So let's have a brief look at these various documents, and I will start with the Council of Europe recommendation on youth work that, as I said, came in 2017. For just to make sure the Council of Europe is not the same thing as the EU. There is sometimes some kind of confusion between these two different institutions. I mean, as you might know, as I think you know, the EU could take these decisions that influence the legislation and rules in each country. It's sort of a level above the countries. It has today 26 members since England left. The Council of Europe, on the other hand, does not take decisions that sort of overrode national legislation, and all the decisions taken in the Council of Europe is taken in consensus. That is to say that this resolution is signed by all the membership countries in the Council of Europe, and that when this one was taken, it was 47 member states. So it's a bigger organization in terms of the number of countries, but they all take these decisions in consensus. That is to say that both Italy and Poland and Sweden and all other countries has actually signed this document and stand behind it, which makes it the most important policy document on youth work so far in Europe. So what is youth work according to the Council of Europe? There is a common understanding that the primary function of youth work is to motivate and support young people to find and pursue constructive pathways in life. Youth work is quintessentially a social practice, working with young people and the societies in which they live, facilitating young people's active participation and inclusion in their communities and in decision-making. And when you read these kind of documents, it's also important to say what's not there. Does it say? It doesn't say that youth work is there to prevent young people to use drugs. It doesn't say that youth work is there to keep the boys out of the street corners or, all these kind of stuff. It's solely a promotional perspective on youth work. And this goes through all these documents. And this is also important to keep in mind. because when we talk about youth work, what youth work is, it's also obvious what youth work is not. Youth work should be rights-based, inclusive, and centered on young people, their needs and abilities. Youth work achieves its aims through engaging young people in the active creation, preparation, delivery, and evaluation of initiatives and activities that reflect their needs, interests, ideas, and experiences. And this sentence is important because there's a lot of talk about, participation. That's the most used word when we're talking about youth work, young people's participation. And this is actually a definition of participation. It's not just that young people feel that they are part of something, it's a clear process where young people are active in creating and so on youth work and related to activities that meets their needs. So if you're looking for a definition of participation, and I will actually get back to this, this is the definition of participation in Europe today. And I have to move you around again. Recommends, in this document, it's recommended that the governments of the member states within their sphere of competence renew their support for youth work by supporting the development of appropriate forms of review and evaluation of the impact and outcomes of youth work. So back again to this knowledge-based approach on youth work. So in 2019 then came the European Charter on Local Youth Work. It was developed within the framework of Europe Goes Local, that is a platform, cooperation platform on the development of youth work. And the members in this platform are the national offices for Erasmus Plus in Europe. So there are today 26 Erasmus Plus offices around Europe that are part of this, and some partner organizations, that is to say the European Youth Forum and KEX and some others as well, that together are cooperating to develop youth work. And in between 2017, when it started, and 2019, we were working intensively to create this European Charter on Local Youth Work. It was out on two big rounds of reference to over 200 organizations. It was discussed in two major European conferences, and it's firmly grounded in the sector, in the youth work sector today. No other document has gone through this kind of a process and has gotten a big approval from the sector. So it's the main practical document for youth work development today. It states the core principles of youth work and says that youth work needs a policy that is based on clear and measurable qualitative and quantitative indicators regarding what shall be achieved in relation to young people's participation, influence, and learning. It needs indicators on the core focus areas of youth work, that is young people's participations, influence, and learning. And the quality development of local youth work needs a clear and comprehensive system for documentation and follow-up of outcomes, preconditions, and work processes in relation to measurable indicators and aims. So this is really two really important parts of this document, because we could talk a lot about core principles and organization and processes, but if we don't have indicators to state what is the qualitative ones, then we're still just talking. Then came the Council of Europe Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, and this document is important also because in some countries, municipalities may say that, okay, but this is taken by states. The Council of Europe recommendation is taken by states. But this Congress is actually constituted by representatives of local and regional authorities. There are 300 people in this Congress with national delegations, and they have all stand behind this document taken in 2021. So, youth work and the role of local and regional authorities, and this is both a resolution, a recommendation, and a so-called explanatory memorandum, and it's the most detailed political document that we have today on youth work and what it takes to develop it. It says that youth work consists in young people taking part in a common process of creating, organizing, planning, preparing, carrying out, and evaluating activities that are based on and respond to their self-perceived needs, interests, ideas, experiences, and goals. And as you could understand, this is, of course, based on the resolution. It says basically, when it comes to principles, the same things as that are said in the resolution, but it gets more into detail when it comes about how this is to come about. Youth work needs to be governed by the setting and continuous follow-up of and dialogue on measurable aims, where quality, the degree of participation, learning, and relevance for reaching the goals of youth is balanced with costs and the target group reached. We need to sort of provide the right kind of things to the right kind of young people at the right costs, it basically says. And just to say it, it also refers back to the charter. So in this document, it's stated that the charter is an important tool to be used for quality development. And this is also said, which I don't bring up here, in this resolution from 2020 on a European Youth Work Agenda. Also there stating that we should use the charter for developing youth work and creating cooperation on local level. So now I've been talking a lot about quality, and everybody's talking about quality development and indicators, but what do we mean when we say quality? And this is kind of very important because this is also a word that is used frequently, and there is sometimes quite a lot of confusion what we mean when we say quality. So here you see the pictures of two pizzerias. They are situated close to each other and have exactly the same very nice pizzas and service. They are totally equal. As you can see, the one on the left has no guests, whereas the one on the right is almost full. But there is still a little bit of space for you, and you really want to have a pizza. So the question is, which one would you go to?
Right.
The right one, the one on the right-hand side. That would be the answer from actually most people. I've been doing these presentations a couple of times before, and everybody, I will go to the one on the right side. Most people would choose. What is the conclusion from this? The conclusion is that quantity might be a quality. For you, it's a qualitative thing that there are other people's eating in this pizzeria. You get into, you sit among other people, so you don't sit alone at a table at the pizzeria on the left-hand side. Quantity might be a quality. Based on this, we need to distinguish, and this is important, between quality and qualitative, and between quantity and quantitative. And I will soon get back to this in a short while. Quality might be built on both qualitative and quantitative elements or dimensions. I will soon talk more about that. There's another question regarding to clarify what quality is that also needs to be asked. So let's have a look at two pairs of genes. Okay. The question is, which of these genes has the highest quality?
Right.
No, because this question is, of course, impossible to answer. The answer totally depends on in which context and with which purpose you plan to wear them. If you want to make a good impression at the disco, you would probably choose the one on the left-hand side. I would perhaps not choose them, but you might perhaps choose the one on the left-hand side. But if you want to look like a serious carpenter, you would definitely choose the one on the right-hand side. This also tells us something about quality. Quality therefore needs to be defined as how well something fulfills its function. Or, put in other words, to what degree the actual outcomes meet what we want to achieve, which might have both qualitative and quantitative dimensions. I used to say that I was once head of a local department for youth work. I had quite a lot of money. I don't remember exactly, about 2 million euros perhaps. And of course, I could make one young people extremely happy, giving this person 2 million euros. Or I could try to reach so many young people that I only get 20 cents each, sort of value, and then I wouldn't make much of a difference. So of course, this is a matter of sort of balance. But quality for me when delivering youth work as head of department, of course, had a quantitative dimension. I had to reach enough young people, but not too many. And they had to get the right kind of outcome in terms of what happened to these young people and how they perceive youth work. So quality has both quantitative and qualitative dimension. And we have to look at both because the tradition in youth work, generally, at least when you're talking to on a municipal level, is that we measure how many young people we reach, but we don't measure actually what the qualitative effects of these what happens to these young people. I once met this board for youth work in Stockholm. I worked 18 years in Stockholm, and they only measured the number of young people. So I suggested to them that we close the youth center, we put a pinball machine at McDonald's and start counting young people. And they said, oh no, we couldn't do that, we have to have youth centers. Yeah, but why? And there was a complete silence around the table. Because they had no idea what kind of qualitative effects youth work should have. They just wanted us to reach as many young people as possible, which of course could have quite negative consequences if you don't do it the right way. So, what you want to achieve should determine what quality indicators you set up. Because as you can see, some people would improve the quality of their genes by making them look worn out, while others would make higher the quality by repairing the worn out parts. So it's totally a question of context. So I have to move you around. To continue the example, sorry, I have to move you around because otherwise I don't see the presentation myself. Continue the example. Oops. If you're buying genes for yourself, you set quality indicators more or less intuitively. Some of you or perhaps parents. So if you're a parent buying genes with your teenager, it is likely that all of them have to be thoroughly examined and prioritized. You will have possible criteria for quality might then be brand, durability, price, environmental effects of the production, etc., etc. And this you discuss with your teenager, whereas perhaps when you go and buy jeans yourself, you're not that picky about what brand it should be. I don't know. If you do not bring your kids along, there is a high risk that you come home with a pair of jeans that fits neither their size nor their perception of what jeans should look like. You come home with something that I say, oh my God, I would never wear that kind of jeans. My friends would, harass me for having those kind of jeans. This explains why deciding on what characterizes quality asks for thorough discussions among all those concerned. That is to say, you have to understand how other actors and youth workers, for example, then young people are an important part of discussing what is quality in youth work and what are the quality indicators that should sort of be measured and follow up on. Indicators. What are indicators? They are points of reference in relation to which reality could be compared, analyzed, and assessed. And I really mean points of references. I will get back to that. Quality indicators are your answers to the question, what characteristics are important if you should be able to see if youth work is of high quality? what characteristics are important. You should be able to see if youth work is of high quality. Indicators could be set in relation to preconditions, for example, youth worker competence, access to equipment. It could be set in relation to work processes, for example, processes for documenting encounters with youth, or how to put on the coffee machine. I mean, that's also a work process. But before setting such indicators, we need indicators on outcomes. Qualitative outputs, for example, number of encounters with young people, number of activity hours, and qualitative effects. For example, young people's self-esteem, has it changed through taking part? Or young people's personal development, have they learned new things, gained new skills, etc. It's first when you know what you want to achieve that you can decide and set indicators on what preconditions and work processes that are needed. There's a, unfortunately, rather strong tendency that people first set indicators on what is needed before knowing what they want to achieve, which is doing things the wrong way around. You don't know what kind of a youth center you need before you know what you want to achieve with this youth center. You don't know how you should work with documentation before you know what you want to achieve, etc., etc. Indicators then. One of the most common traps when setting indicators is the belief that we mean the same things with the words we use. We usually don't, at least not if we need to be precise. I mean, I've been using the word quality, and if I would have asked in advance, I would have gotten quite a lot of different answers from you on what is quality. I've been using the word indicator or participation, and I would also get a lot of different, interpretations of difference of these words. And we need to be precise when working with quality indicators. An example. If we say that young people's participation is one of the things that characterizes quality in youth work, and this is in all, I would say, policy documents that you could find both on a national, European, and perhaps also on a local level. What would then be a good, clear, and stringent definition of participation? Participation is the active creation, preparation, delivery, and evaluation of initiatives and activities that reflect their needs, interests, ideas, and experiences. This is the definition of participation today. Now, this is not a point of reference. This is a whole sentence. This contains many different parts in this sentence, so it's not functioning as a point of reference. This then needs to be turned into points of reference in relation to which reality could be compared, analyzed, and assessed. Indicators on participation are, for example, that young people take part in preparations. Are they taking part in preparations or not? That they take part in delivery. Are they actively sort of delivering youth work? Does young people take part in evaluation? Do they feel that it is their process? They are not just helping youth workers to run a youth center, but it's actually their process that meets their need. Does this activity meet your needs? Does it meet their interest? Do they own the process, or is the process run by youth workers with the assistance of young people, or is it run by young people with the assistance of youth workers, for example? These are concrete enough to be able to be used as indicators. Does young people take part in preparations, or are they not? Indicators define what we mean, in this case with participation, and are possible to measure. This also illustrates the fact that quality is not a question of total failure or success. It's a question of degree. If you ask 100 young people if they are part of evaluating youth work, you might have 0, which is of course a sad failure, or you might have all 100 of them are taking part in evaluation, but you might also need perhaps half of them say this. So it's a question of degree, how well we meet our indicators. and there is always room for improvement, of course. So quality is not, is this qualitative or is it not? It's a question of degrees. To what degree do we meet our aims? It's not a question, do we meet our aims or not? It's a question of to what degree do we meet our aims? And indicators help us to make this clear. Aims, objectives, and goals, then. What is this? How does they differ from quality indicators? They are descriptions of to what degree we want reality to correspond with the indicator. An example. Indicator, young people take part in evaluation. That's a quality indicator. The aim, 50% of young people that take part in youth work take part in evaluation. You might say the aim is 75% of young people take part in youth work, take part in evaluation, or 25% or 100%, which would be unrealistic. But the aim is to what degree do we want to indicate? What do we think is a reasonable level of young people that take part in evaluation? I don't say that 50% is a reasonable level, it's just an example. Another example, also to make clear that you could go deeper into this. Indicator, young people feel listened to during evaluation. They're not just there, they actually feel listened to. And the aim would be that 80% of young people that take part in evaluation agree to that they have been listened to. So aims is to what level do we want reality to correspond with indicators, which makes it very clear that first you make up indicators, first you create indicators, then you set aims, not the other way around, which unfortunately also is quite common, which makes things enormously complicated, of course. Tools for follow-up then, because of course it's no use setting indicators and setting aims in relation to indicators if you don't have the correct tools for doing follow-up. We need different tools to gather the information we need in order to see to what degree reality corresponds with the indicators. For example, and this is not extensive, a sheet for documenting statistics. How many young people do we reach? How many young people take part in evaluation, etc., etc. And questionnaires to young people. This is extremely important. How did you perceive this? Were you actually listened to? In my personal experience, that we need questionnaires, and we need some work only with focus groups, or we have been talking to young people. But you must be aware of that being a youth worker is a kind of a power position, and that young people are likely not to be as critical as they would like to be if you just talk to them. But if you ask anonymous questionnaires, you get a more true picture how they actually perceive youth work. And of course, templates for documenting work process, etc., is another example of another kind of tool that you need to gather the information you need to use this information to improve youth work. So the process then of setting indicators, because this is of course a kind of a process. An example. We think that quality criteria, something that characterizes quality in youth work, is that young people feel secure or safe. I would say that this is quite obvious. You don't take part in youth work if you feel safe. But what does this actually mean? How could we create quality criteria in relation to this idea, so to speak? That is to say, youth work meets their basic needs of feeling safe. What would indicate, be a sign of that? Feeling safe could, for example, mean young people are not feeling discriminating due to sex, religion, ethnic background, etc., etc. But it could also mean young people are not feeling at risk of being discriminated, which take a step deeper, if you see what I mean. But safety is not just absence of discrimination or harassment. It might also be characterized by, for example, young people know where to turn if harassed. That's also a sign of feeling security and making things. They sense that they can actually turn there. I mean, I know that I could turn to the police if I'm harassed, but I would never do so. Uh, or I would feel that I could turn there. And if I then turn to the police when harassed, or if I turn to a youth worker saying, sorry, but my friends here or the other young people in the youth center are harassing me, uh, they sense that the ones harassing them will be stopped. I mean, they will never turn to a youth worker saying, I'm harassed by others in the youth center if they don't think that the youth worker will actually act on it. This is the kind of process, this is the kind of continuous asking questions that you will have to use when constructing or creating indicators. And you must, of course, also ask yourself, who should feel safe? Young people feel safe regardless of age, gender, background, disability, etc. And then you have to have ways to document and get knowledge on the different perceptions that different groups might have. We could see in some areas, we do a lot of follow-up, that young people feel harassed due to ethnic background in some youth centers, for example, because they are perhaps visiting a youth center where the majority are of Swedish ethnic background and they feel disadvantaged. Then you have to first ask them and be able to sort your information on the background of young people. Boys and girls definitely perceive some youth work activities differently, and also perceive the atmosphere in youth centers quite often quite differently, and have different wishes also for what should happen. The more indicators we have, the more precise is our definition of, in this case, safety. If you have too few indicators, you won't have the information needed. If you have too many indicators, you will just get confused. You will have too much information to be able to handle. So also this is a question of balance, finding the right level, so to speak, of amount and preciseness of the indicators. When we ask young people questions related to these indicators, their answers will tell us to what degree they are safe. That is to say, to what degree reality meets the indicators. This is not questions that you should ask to youth workers. I just made another presentation this morning and got back to an investigation into municipality in Sweden where that we did some 10 years ago, maybe, or 8 years ago. And we asked staff, are young people active are they actually participating in an active way in creating activities? 82% of the staff said yes, they are. 13% of the young people gave the same answer. So when finding out quality in youth work, you have to have systems that actually turn to young people asking these kind of questions, because youth workers tend, as we all do, to overestimate our own capacity or our own work. So the process would be define the needs of young people that youth work should answer to, for example, being part of society, feeling safe, participation, influence, learning, and so on. Break them down into measurable indicators. Define the target group so that you can see if there are differences, and this is perhaps beyond what you should do now, define relevant cost variables so we could actually see that we invest the money in the right kind of activities. That we have done in KEX, but I don't know if will be part of your project. Then we will be able to show to what degree we meet the right needs of the right young people at the right costs. To gather the knowledge we need to improve and to learn from each other and do knowledge-based advocacy and development. Because if we have common indicators and a common way to do follow-up, you could learn from each other. If you have many youth centers in Poland, for example, having the same kind of system for documentation and follow-up, you will most likely find out that some youth centers are good at some things, but not so good at others, while others are good at the other things, but not so good at the first thing. And then you could learn from each other. But then you need to have this kind of sustainable information based on the same quality indicators. Setting indicators is a process of digging, of deconstructing familiar concepts like participation into their smallest parts. It requires the ability to look at use work from different perspectives and to ask constructively critical questions. And of course, looking from different perspectives is hard. So the more different stakeholders you have involved, that is to say, both perhaps the political level, young people and youth workers and those responsible for youth work provision, the more perspectives and critical questions you have, the better will be the outcome. What does this really mean? Asking, this kind of little bit naughty questions is a key thing to developing quality indicators, not being afraid of being critical, because if you're not critical, you won't succeed. When running this process, you need to always think about what information do you need in order to know to what degree you meet this indicator. That is to say, you have to think about how do I gather the information. Some information is hard to gather, some information is quite easy to gather. But you have to be able, so you don't make up indicators and then in the next step, you'll find out that we couldn't gather the information needed to see if we meet this indicator or not. Then the indicator is useless. So you have to have a parallel process looking, how do we gather this information? And I would still say that asking young people in a structured way through questionnaires, and then, of course, making them part of analyzing the outcomes, that's the crucial way of finding out and developing youth work. What methods are you going to use to gather it? And just to say some last words, to have a curious, wanting to learn attitude, to ask questions before giving answers, not being too quick answering them, to listen and think before talking, that's always a good advice, to be able to kill your darlings, your preconceptions of what quality is, and to have fun. This should be a fun process, actually. So if you're running quality youth work, it's worthwhile being able to prove it. Thank you.